My son told me I bring nothing valuable to his life, so I showed him what value really means. I'm Maria Delgado, 60 years old, mother of one. I spent 45 years running a small diner on Chicago's South Side, up before sunrise, grease on my sleeves, saving every dollar so Daniel could have the life I never did. Today, he's a senior financial analyst at a tech firm downtown, makes $300,000 a year, drives a Tesla, lives rent-free in the brick house I paid off 15 years ago. He eats my food, uses my utilities, and still calls this arrangement temporary. Last Friday, I met his fiance's parents for the first time, the Holbrooks, old money Atlanta family who relocated to the North Shore, the kind of people who say sweetheart but mean small. I spent the day cooking, slow roasted brisket, garlic potatoes, roasted peppers, real food with history. I wanted them to taste where we came from. At 6, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Holbrook stepped in first, pearls and perfumes strong enough to make the walls remember her. Her husband followed, hand already half out for a handshake that felt like a contract. Daniel smiled like a talk show guest. "Mom, these are Claire and Thomas Holbrook." I reached out my hand. "Welcome, dinner's almost ready." Claire looked around my kitchen, the spice jars, the mismatched mugs, the framed picture of my diner's grand opening, and said, "How quaint." I laughed politely. I've been called worse. Dinner started fine. Small talk, safe talk, where we grew up, where they summer. Then Thomas looked at Daniel and said, "Son, this place has great bones. How long have you owned it?" Daniel didn't even look my way. He said, "Oh, it's family property. My mom lives here too. Mostly just cooks and keeps the place tidy. Doesn't really contribute otherwise." The fork slipped from my hand. I heard the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of ice in Claire's glass, the words echoing, "doesn't really contribute." 45 years of 16-hour shifts, double mortgages, burnt palms, and bank rejections, erased in one sentence. Claire smiled politely, as if agreeing, "Well, that's lovely. Every home needs a caretaker." I looked at my son. The same boy who once cried over my blistered hands. The same boy who promised, "When I make it big, you'll never work again, Mom." He met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said, "Interesting perspective, son." And I smiled. The kind of smile that ends wars or starts one. After dessert, they left early, something about traffic back to the North Shore. Daniel stayed downstairs pretending to clean up, though I heard him checking his reflection in the stainless steel oven. When the house finally went quiet, I sat at the table and looked at my hands, same hands that once held him through fevers and fear. Then I reached for a notepad and wrote 3 words: bank, lawyer, realtor. 3 phone calls, 3 small moves that would change everything. You see, mothers don't forget. We record, we file, we act. The next morning, before the sun even stretched its fingers over Lake Michigan, I brewed coffee and opened my laptop. First call, Midwest Heritage Bank. I've kept my accounts there since 1980. "Good morning, Miss Delgado," the manager said. "What can I do for you?" "I need to know the current market value of my property," I said, "and what a quick cash sale looks like." She paused. "Are you thinking of downsizing?" "Something like that." Second call, Attorney Ross. He helped me settle my husband's estate back in '04. "Morning, Maria. Everything okay?" "Need to update my will," I said, "and move some assets somewhere private." He knew that tone. He didn't ask questions. Third call, Angela Perez, real estate agent. She's the daughter of the man who used to wash dishes at my diner. "Angela, I need to sell the house. Quietly. Cash buyer only. 30-day close." Her breath caught. "Mrs. Delgado, are you sure? That's the house Daniel—" "I'm sure." By noon, the wheels were turning. But while I planned, I also remembered. When Daniel was 5, he'd sit on the diner counter swinging his legs, handing customers napkins, telling them jokes he barely understood. When he was 16, he asked for designer shoes. I worked 2 double shifts to buy them. He wore them once. When he was 22, he graduated summa cum laude. I cried so hard I could barely clap. Somewhere between that stage and this kitchen table, my son forgot who paid for his podium. I looked around the living room. My old photos were gone, replaced with sleek black and white prints of city skylines. The cross I used to keep above the doorway had been misplaced during renovations. Even the diner's framed newspaper article, Delgado's Diner, Heart of the South Side, was missing. In its place hung his MBA diploma. I whispered to myself, "You built walls with my name still wet on the foundation, and now you're ashamed of the handwriting?" That night, while he was at some rooftop bar with Claire, I packed a single box: my wedding photo, my diner's first ledger, the handwritten recipe card for the brisket he used to beg for every Sunday. I slid the box under my bed. The next day, I called one more number. Not the bank, not the lawyer, not the realtor. This one belonged to the woman who runs the Hope Table, a nonprofit kitchen that trains single mothers to cook and manage food businesses. "Renee," I said, "how many women could you train if money wasn't the issue?" She laughed. "All of them." "What if I gave you enough to open a second kitchen, pay stipends, buy ovens, a delivery van?" Silence, then tears. "Maria, you can't be serious." "I'm always serious," I said, because I wasn't just selling a house. I was buying back my dignity and investing it where it would multiply. That night, I watched Daniel post a photo on Instagram. Him and Claire at dinner, champagne glasses raised, caption, "Building our future together." He had no idea I'd already started remodeling it. If you've ever been underestimated by someone you raised, you'll want to hear what happened next. Because the first phone call changed everything, and the second one made sure my son would never forget who built his foundation. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the moment the movers arrive at his perfect little world. My son had no idea that while he was busy polishing his image, I was already dismantling the stage beneath him. The first phone call had set the plan in motion, but by Monday morning, things were moving faster than I expected. The banker emailed the valuation report before sunrise. My 3-bedroom brick home in Lincoln Park was worth $1.9 million. No mortgage, no liens, pure equity, the kind of security I once dreamed of handing down. But I realized something that morning. You can't hand down respect. You have to earn it, and sometimes reclaim it. At 8:30, I met with Attorney Ross. Same walnut-paneled office he's had for decades, same smell of leather and coffee. He poured me a cup, looked at me over his glasses. "Maria, you sure you want to do this?" I'm done giving people roofs they use to look down on me. He smiled, the slow kind that says he's seen this story before, but still enjoys the ending. We moved everything quietly into a private trust, the Hope Table Foundation. He drew up the papers. I signed them without hesitation. Every legal signature felt like cutting a cord that had been wrapped around my heart for years. By 10:30, I was sitting across from Angela Perez, my realtor. She brought coffee and a folder. 3 interested buyers already, Mrs. Delgado. Tech money, cash ready. Showing Sunday, noon to 4, I said. Daniel won't be home. She nodded. I'll make it happen. It was almost too easy. For a moment I thought, maybe I should feel guilty. But then I remembered that dinner, the look in his eyes when he said I didn't contribute. He wasn't just talking about chores or bills. He was talking about worth. And when someone questions your worth, you either shrink or you shine. I'd done enough shrinking. That afternoon, I stopped by the Hope Table. The air smelled of onions and second chances. Renee ran to me, her apron dusted with flour. You really mean it? You're donating your house? I'm donating possibility, I said. The house is just the wrapping paper. She introduced me to 3 women chopping vegetables at the prep counter. Cynthia, mother of 2, learning to bake. Tanya, fresh out of a messy divorce, perfecting her spice blends. Amari, 19, living in a shelter, learning how to fry chicken without burning the oil. They looked at me like I was someone, not a burden, not an old story. Someone. That evening, I came home to the sound of laughter. Daniel and Claire were in the living room, wine glasses in hand, music low. He looked up and said, Mom, we're thinking of hosting an engagement dinner here next month. Big crowd. Her parents are excited. I smiled. That's wonderful. Inside, I was counting down the weeks. 3 until the sale closed, 4 until I handed the keys over to the buyers, and 5 until the only dinner he'd host here would be the one that taught him everything he forgot. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost, packing quietly while he slept, tucking away my memories in boxes under the bed. The photo of his father holding him after his first haircut. The diner's menu I hand-lettered the year it opened. The rosary my mother brought from Puerto Rico. All the things he once said smelled too old. He came home late every night, too distracted to notice. Sometimes I'd hear him laughing on the phone, saying things like, "I'll convince Mom to let us remodel before the engagement dinner, maybe modernize it a little." Modernize. Translation, erase more of me. Friday morning, I signed the final documents with Angela and attorney Ross. The sale would close in exactly 21 days. Funds wired directly to the Hope Table Foundation. No trail for Daniel to trace. That afternoon, I took the bus back to the diner, the one I'd sold years ago. The new owners had kept my neon sign, but replaced Delgado's diner with Delago. Still, the smell of coffee and grilled onions hasn't changed. I sat in my old booth and ordered pancakes. The waitress asked, "You eating alone?" I smiled. For now. Walking home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light. Like the years of exhaustion were finally exhaling. Like every insult had turned into fuel. That night, I called Renee again. "Tell the women to start drafting menus for the new kitchen," I said. "What new kitchen?" "The one we'll open in my son's old neighborhood." When I hung up, I looked around the living room one last time. The walls gleamed with his minimalist taste. Cold, perfect, empty. I whispered, "You wanted a home that looked like success, Daniel. Let's see how it looks without me in it." Then I turned off the lights. When a mother moves in silence, people mistake it for weakness. But silence can be strategy, and mine was almost ready to roar. Make sure you're subscribed, because now you'll see what happened when the house went up for sale, and who really came to buy it. They say every house has a story. Mine was written in calloused hands, sleepless nights, and the smell of fried onions that never quite left the curtains. I bought this place in 1991, a 3-bedroom brick home with a broken porch light and a roof that leaked whenever it rained sideways. It cost more than my diner made in 6 months. But I told the agent, if I can work 16 hours on my feet, I can pay 16 years on a loan. And I did. Every single payment, every single repair. That's the house Daniel grew up in. The house where I made his Halloween costumes from scraps of diner uniforms. The house where we slept in the same bed the winter the furnace broke. The house where I cried the night he left for college, proud, terrified, and already missing the sound of his shoes at the door. Now it looked like a showroom. Modern furniture, neutral colors, not a trace of our past. He called it refined. I called it erased. Saturday morning, I started cleaning out the storage room. Dust and silence everywhere. In one corner, I found the old diner ledger, coffee-stained, pages curled, the book that held 40 years of numbers and names. I ran my fingers over the ink. I could still see where my hands had trembled during slow months, where I'd written little prayers in the margins. Please, God, let tomorrow be busy.
And somehow, he always did. I found Daniel's first report card tucked inside. "Daniel's curiosity is boundless," his teacher had written. "He asks more questions than anyone in class." That same curiosity built his career. But somewhere along the way, it stopped including me. At noon, I took the bus to the Hope Table. Renee greeted me with a clipboard and a hug. "You ready to see what you started?" she asked. They'd already repainted the walls, bright yellow, like sunshine bottled. Tanya was teaching a small group how to make empanadas. Cynthia was training 2 new women on how to balance inventory sheets. The air was thick with laughter, garlic, and ambition. "This is what value smells like," I whispered. Renee showed me a stack of thank you notes from women who'd heard about the new location. I read one from a young mom that said, "You don't know me, Miss Delgado, but I'm praying for you, because women like you make me believe I can still start over." I pressed that note against my chest. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just selling a house. I was trading it for something alive. When I got back home that night, Daniel was in the living room scrolling through emails, half watching TV. "Mom, I've been thinking," he said. I'm listening. When we host the engagement dinner, could you maybe not cook? Why? Because Claire's mom wants to hire a catering company. You know, something more formal. I looked at him, my son, sitting in the house built by my hands, telling me my cooking wasn't good enough for his table. I smiled the same way I did at that dinner. Whatever makes you happy, son. Inside, something in me clicked shut, like a door that would never open the same way again. After he went to bed that night, I stood in the kitchen under the soft light and whispered to myself, he's hosting strangers in a home I built for family. The next morning, Angela called. Mrs. Delgado, I just finished the private showing. We have 2 cash offers, both over asking, but one of them, well, I think you'll like this. Who is it? A family from Milwaukee. Husband's a chef, wife's a teacher, 2 kids. They said they fell in love with the kitchen. I smiled. Of course they did. I picked that one without hesitation. Money wasn't a point. The heart was. Later that afternoon, I walked through the house one more time, just to remember what it looked like before everything changed. The smell of lemon cleaner, the hum of the refrigerator, the photo of Daniel and me at his graduation, the last one he hadn't taken down yet. I touched the frame. His smile looked so real then. Maybe it was. By evening, the offer was signed. Closing date, 3 weeks. I made one more stop before bed. The church on the corner, the same one that held my husband's funeral. I lit 2 candles, one for forgiveness, one for clarity. Then I sat in the back pew and whispered a prayer I hadn't said in years. God, don't let me do this out of anger. Let me do it out of love, even if it burns.
When I got home, Daniel was asleep on the couch. His phone lay open on the coffee table, a text thread glowing from Claire. So excited about the engagement dinner. My parents want to invite a few investors too. It'll be good exposure for you. Exposure. That's what I'd given my whole life for, to be exposed as the woman who built a man who forgot her name. I turned off the lights and whispered, 3 weeks, Maria, 3 weeks. Sometimes love means feeding someone. Sometimes it means teaching them hunger. Subscribe because you'll see what happened when I turned my son's engagement dinner into a lesson he'll never forget, and how one mother's silence became the loudest message of her life. They say the quiet ones are the most dangerous. I wasn't dangerous. I was determined. 3 weeks. That's all I needed. Daniel had no idea that the walls around him were already sold. While he and Claire planned their grand engagement dinner, I was planning the most poetic ending to their fairy tale. For days, the house buzzed with deliveries: white flowers, glass rentals, champagne crates. Every time I passed a vase, I could smell money that wasn't his. He walked through the living room in his tailored shirt, pointing, commanding. Mom, let's move that table. The lighting's better near the window. Sure, son. Mom, could you not hang those old pictures in the hallway? It throws off the aesthetic. No problem. Mom, please, just stay out of sight when the guests arrive. I'll introduce you later. Of course. I smiled through every sentence, the way mothers do when they already know the ending of the story. By now, the Hope Table Foundation was fully registered. The sale funds would transfer the day the house changed hands. Renee had already secured a lease for the second kitchen on Ashland Avenue, a big open space with a rooftop garden. We planned to name it Maria's Table. I told her not to. She said it wasn't up for debate. The morning of the engagement dinner, I woke before dawn. I made one last meal in that kitchen, not for them, but for me. Brisket, rice, and roasted vegetables. The same recipe I made the day Daniel got his first job offer. The same one he once called the taste of home. As it simmered, I looked around the kitchen. The marbled counters he'd picked, the chrome fixtures he said made it look professional. And all I could think was, professional doesn't mean proud. Somewhere between success and shame, he forgot the difference. At noon, the caterers arrived. French accents, black uniforms, eyes that judged every corner of the house. "Madame, we need this counter cleared," one said. I wiped my hands and stepped aside. "Of course," I said again. Always polite, always invisible. By 6 o'clock, the place was glowing. Fairy lights, soft music, wine glasses lined like soldiers. Guests started pouring in, all perfect smiles and expensive perfumes. I recognized none of them. His colleagues, her family, investors, people who thought champagne bubbles were character references. I stayed in the kitchen, out of the way, watching through the window above the sink. Daniel laughed loudly, his hand resting on Claire's back. Her parents mingled proudly. The Holbrooks had found their match. I almost pitied them. Almost. At 7, Angela called. "Mrs. Delgado, everything's set. Buyers finalized tomorrow morning. Movers will be there at 10. I whispered, "Perfect." Then I placed the phone down and turned off the stove. By 7:30, the laughter outside grew louder. I heard toasts, her father thanking Daniel's hospitality, Claire gushing about their beautiful home. Their home. I felt something inside me shift from pain to peace. They could have it all, the marble, the art, the attention, but they couldn't have me. At 8 sharp, the doorbell rang. Daniel's voice carried through the music. "I'll get it." Then silence. Then confusion. Then footsteps. Then the words I'd been waiting for. There must be some mistake." I peeked through the window. A moving truck. Big, white, loud. 2 men in uniforms holding clipboards. "Evening," one said. "We're here for the Delgado job. Moving everything out tonight. New owners want walkthrough in the morning." Guests began drifting toward the front door, curious. Claire's mother clutched her pearls. Moving? Surely not during an engagement party. Daniel turned pale. "Mom," he yelled. I stepped into the hallway, calm as ever. "Yes, son." "What is this? Why are movers here?" "Oh," I said, pretending to think. "That must be for me." Every eye turned toward me. Claire's father frowned. "What's going on here?" I clasped my hands, smiled. I sold the house. Gasps. Whispers. Someone dropped a glass. Daniel blinked. "You what?" "I sold it last week. Closing's tomorrow morning." He laughed nervously, glancing at the crowd. "She's joking, obviously." I met his eyes. "I don't joke about deeds, son." The silence that followed could have cracked the marble floors. Claire's mother stammered. "You sold their home?" "Correction," I said. "My home. You see, Daniel lives here rent-free, always has." A few guests tried to slip away quietly. Claire's father adjusted his tie, murmuring something about bad timing. Daniel took a step toward me. "Mom, you can't be serious. You can't just—" "I can," I said softly. And I did. He froze. For the first time, I saw the little boy he used to be, confused, scared, unsure. But I wasn't his safety net anymore. I was his mirror. And he didn't like the reflection. Claire's face was red. "Daniel, is this true? You don't own this house?" He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. I turned to her. "Sweetheart, maybe next time you'll ask what kind of man you're marrying before you pick the flowers." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. The truth was spreading faster than the champagne bubbles. Then I looked at my son, my only child, and said the words that sealed his lesson. "You told me I bring nothing valuable to your life. Tonight, you'll see what happens when the things I built disappear." And I walked past him toward the movers. "Gentlemen," I said, "start with the living room." Behind me, Daniel's world began to crumble, politely, in pearls and panic. The engagement dinner of his dreams had turned into the wake of his pride. If you think that was brutal, wait until you hear what happened the next morning, when my son woke up to an empty house and a truth even money couldn't buy. Make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next isn't revenge, it's revelation. By the time dawn crawled across the skyline, the house was almost empty. Boxes gone, furniture gone, echoes in every room. The only thing left was the smell of roses from Claire's party, sweet, fake, temporary. I was sitting at the kitchen table when Daniel came downstairs. He wasn't in his expensive suit anymore, just sweatpants, confusion, and silence. He looked around like someone waking up from a dream. "Mom," he whispered, "what did you do?" I didn't answer right away. I just poured 2 cups of coffee, placed one in front of him, and said, "I made breakfast." He blinked. "Breakfast? There's nothing left to eat." I smiled. "Oh, there's always something left. You just have to look harder." He sat across from me, eyes still darting between the bare walls. "I lost everything last night," he said finally. I nodded. "You didn't lose anything. You just realized none of it was yours." He stared at me for a long time. Then he laughed, short, hollow. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone I care about." "No, Daniel," I said calmly. "You embarrassed yourself the moment you decided your mother wasn't worth mentioning." He flinched like I'd slapped him, but I hadn't. Words can hit harder than hands. "Where are all my things?" he asked. "Packed. The movers will deliver them wherever you decide to start over." "Start over? Mom, you've destroyed my life." I leaned forward. "No, son, I've reset it." He stood, pacing, running both hands through his hair. "You could have talked to me." "I did," I said. "You just stopped listening years ago." He dropped back into his chair, defeated. "What about the house? The money? Where is it?" "I donated it." He froze. "You what?" "To a cause that reminds me what real value looks like." I told him about the Hope Table Foundation, about the women it would train, the jobs it would create, the second kitchen opening across town. His eyes filled with disbelief. "You gave away my inheritance for charity?" I laughed softly. "Inheritance? You thought this house was your birthright? No, Daniel, it was my reward, and now it's my gift." He pushed his chair back. "You're insane." I nodded. "Maybe, but I sleep better knowing my hard work will feed families instead of egos." Just then, his phone buzzed on the table. The name on the screen read Harper, senior partner. He hesitated, then answered. "Yes, sir, I understand. Yes, it was a personal matter. Yes, I'll handle the fallout." He ended the call, pale. "They're reviewing my position at the firm," he said. "That video from last night, it's everywhere." I sipped my coffee. "People finally saw who you really are. Maybe that's the start of something good." He slammed his fist on the table. "You ruined me." I stayed still. "No, son, I reminded you that you're not untouchable. Every generation has to learn that the hard way." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the fight left him. He sank into the chair, head in his hands. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Start smaller," I said. "Learn again what it feels like to build something with your own hands. Maybe then you'll understand mine." Outside, a truck engine rumbled. The new owners, a young couple with 2 kids, were pulling up. Daniel turned to me, panic in his eyes. "You're not serious?" "I'm very serious. The Hendersons take possession today." When the couple walked in, smiling shyly, I greeted them like family. "Welcome home," I said. The wife smiled. "It's beautiful, Mrs. Delgado. We'll take good care of it." "I know you will." Daniel stood frozen by the stairs, watching strangers step into his perfect world. The husband extended his hand to him. "You must be the previous owner." Daniel didn't answer. I did. "No, he just stayed here for a while." The couple thanked me and walked the rooms with bright eyes and grateful hearts. Daniel stared after them like a ghost. When they left, he turned to me. "How could you do this to me?" I looked him straight in the eye. "The same way I built everything you took for granted, one choice at a time." He was silent. For the first time in years, he didn't have a comeback, a correction, or a condescending smile. Just quiet. Heavy, human quiet. As I gathered my purse and keys, I said, "I'm heading to the new kitchen. They're hanging the sign today." He blinked. "You have nowhere to live." "Oh, I have a small apartment in the South Side. Cozy, simple, mine. You forget, I don't need much to feel rich." He didn't respond, just sat there, surrounded by walls that no longer belonged to him. When I opened the front door, sunlight spilled in. I paused, turned back, and said, "You told me once that I contribute nothing. Today, my contribution fills plates across this city. Tell me, Daniel, what does yours fill?" I closed the door before he could answer. Outside, the movers nodded goodbye. I handed them each a container of food I'd made earlier, my last meal cooked in that house. They smiled, grateful. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Sometimes the end of one chapter is the meal that feeds the next. But what my son did afterward, even I didn't see coming. Subscribe, because next you'll see what happened when the headlines caught up and the world learned what one mother's nothing could build. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls, emails, people I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my number. Renee called first, nearly shouting through the line. "Maria, have you seen it?" "Seen what?" I asked, half asleep in my tiny apartment, coffee brewing on the stove. "It's everywhere! Your story! Someone filmed the whole thing at the engagement party. You're viral." I opened my phone. There it was. Mother sells home from ungrateful son, teaches him a lesson in humility. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Some called me cruel. Most called me brilliant. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen. I wasn't used to attention that didn't involve a food order. Renee kept talking. "People are donating to the Hope Table Foundation. I'm talking thousands. We're trending on every platform. You just started a movement, Maria." I laughed softly. "I didn't start anything, Renee. I just stopped being silent." An hour later, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune called. She wanted an interview. She said, "Your story's inspiring working mothers everywhere. You showed what happens when dignity meets backbone." I agreed to meet her at the diner I once owned, the one now we named Deligo. When I walked in, the manager recognized me instantly. "Mrs. Delgado," he said, "your picture still hangs in the office." I smiled. It's good to know something of me stayed behind. The reporter asked question after question. "What made you do it? What message would you give to other parents?" I said, "Sometimes love means giving your children everything. And sometimes love means taking it all away so they can finally see the ground they're standing on." By the time I got home, the Hope Table Foundation had hit $500,000 in donations. Renee sent a photo, women laughing, cooking, hugging. Underneath it, she wrote, "You didn't just sell a house, Maria. You built one for all of us." I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat quietly, letting gratitude settle where anger used to live. That night, Daniel called, the first call since the confrontation. I almost didn't answer, but a mother's instinct, it doesn't retire. I picked up. "Mom," he said. His voice sounded small, tired. "I saw the video. Everyone did. I know. Do you hate me?" I sighed. "Hate's easy, son. I'm busy." He was silent for a moment. Then, "I lost my job today. They said I brought unnecessary attention to the firm. The press won't stop calling." "I'm sorry," I said softly. "No, you're not. You're right. I'm not." He chuckled bitterly. "You really don't care." "That's not true," I said. "I care enough to let consequences do what comfort never could." He didn't respond. I heard him breathing, the way he used to when he had nightmares as a kid. Then he said quietly, "Claire left." I waited. "She said her parents think I'm unstable. They want her to distance herself." I didn't say I told you so. He already knew. "Mom, what do I do now?" I closed my eyes. "You live. You learn. You start from zero, like I did, with your hands, not your hashtags." There was a long pause. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" "I think that depends on which version of you walks back into my life." Then I ended the call. The next morning, Good Morning America wanted an appearance. A local pastor called to ask if I'd speak to a group of young mothers. Even the mayor's office sent a thank you note. But I didn't care about any of that. I only cared about one thing, that the women at the Hope Table got their new equipment. New ovens, new mixers, new uniforms, all delivered that same week. I went down to visit them on Friday. When I walked in, I could barely move. The place was packed with volunteers and new faces. The walls were painted coral pink, the same shade as my old diner. A sign hung above the kitchen window, "Where nothing becomes everything." Renee came over, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "This is because of you," she said. "No," I said, smiling. "It's because of every woman who's ever been told she's not valuable and decided to prove otherwise." As I looked around the kitchen, the laughter, the motion, the aroma of something honest cooking, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind that comes when pain finally finishes its work. Sometimes karma takes its time. Sometimes it moves faster than you can cook dinner. But what my son did next, I never expected. Make sure you're subscribed, because the next part isn't about revenge anymore. It's about redemption. And trust me, you'll want to hear how it ends. 6 months had passed since that night. The headlines had quieted, the video had faded under newer scandals. But the lessons, they lingered, the way garlic stays on your hands no matter how hard you wash. The new Hope Table Kitchen on Ashland Avenue was alive. Laughter mixed with the sound of chopping knives and sizzling pans. Every morning, women arrived early, mothers, daughters, survivors, all chasing second chances in aprons and hairnets. I wasn't their boss, I was just there. A quiet presence, wiping counters, tasting sauces, reminding them that someone believed in them before they believed in themselves. We'd just finished serving our 100th catered event when Renee came in waving her phone. "Maria, did you see this?" It was a photo online, a press piece about the Hope Table Foundation. The caption read, "From housewife to hero, how one mother turned betrayal into a movement." Under it was a picture of me, apron on, laughing with a group of women over a pot of soup. I smiled. "Hero? No, just hungry." "For what?" she asked. "For peace," I said. "And maybe forgiveness, if it ever knocks." That night, I went home to my small one-bedroom apartment on the South Side. Quiet, simple, paid for, mine. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like fireflies caught between glass and sky. And that's when I heard it, the knock. 3 soft taps, familiar rhythm. I froze. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the door. There he was, Daniel. He looked different, thinner, softer somehow. The arrogance washed out of his face, replaced by something older, humbler. He held a paper bag in his hand. "I brought dinner," he said quietly. I didn't move. "From where?" "From my job," he said. "I'm working at a nonprofit legal clinic now. They pay less, but they feed people after hours. I cooked tonight. It's lentil stew." I blinked. "You cooked?" He smiled faintly. "You're not the only one who can read a recipe." I stepped aside. "Come in." He placed the food on the counter, looking around my small apartment. "This place suits you," he said. "Feels real." "It is real," I replied. "Everything I own here fits in my heart and my cabinets. That's how I like it." He nodded, eyes wandering to the framed photo of my old diner hanging near the window. "I used to hate that smell. Onions and coffee," he said. "You hated a lot of things that kept you alive." He looked down. I deserved that. We sat at the table, the same old wooden table I'd rescued from the house before the sale. He handed me a bowl of stew. It was simple, but good, seasoned, honest. Like him, maybe. After a few spoonfuls, he spoke. "I watched all your interviews. I read every article. Everyone calls you strong, inspiring. They don't know the half of it." "I didn't do it for praise," I said. "I know," he whispered. "You did it for me, even if it broke me first." We sat in silence, the kind that holds forgiveness between breaths. Finally, he said, "I've been volunteering at shelters. I started teaching kids about financial literacy, helping them open savings accounts. Thought maybe I could do something good too." I smiled. "Looks like the lesson worked." He laughed softly. "It did. Too well." Then his voice cracked. "Mom, I'm sorry." The words were small, but they carried years. I was arrogant. I was ashamed of where I came from. I thought success meant forgetting my roots. But when you took it all away, you reminded me that I had nothing if I couldn't honor the woman who made me. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Not yet. I reached across the table, took his hand. Daniel, I don't want your guilt. I want your growth. Don't apologize with words. Live it. He nodded. I want to help the Hope Table, he said. I can handle your legal filings, contracts, maybe even fundraising, for free. I smiled. For free? The world really did flip upside down. He chuckled. Guess humility has a way of doing that. When he stood to leave, he paused by the door. Will you ever come see me? I moved to a small apartment in Pilsen. Nothing fancy, but there's a real community. The neighbors share food. You'd like them. I said, invite me for Sunday dinner. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. I will. After he left, I sat back at the table, staring at the empty bowl. It wasn't the food that filled me. It was the quiet proof that change had taken root. Outside, the city hummed. Horns, sirens, laughter, life. I whispered to the air, maybe some lessons don't end in silence after all. Some endings taste like bitterness, others like healing. But this story isn't quite done yet. Hit subscribe and stay with me, because you'll see what happened when Sunday dinner came back to my table, and how one meal rebuilt a family from the ashes of pride. Sunday came slow that week, the way forgiveness does when it's almost ready. The sky was pale blue, quiet, soft, the kind that reminds you of clean slates.
I spent the morning cooking. Not for a crowd, not for a cause, just for family. Roast chicken, rice, beans, sweet cornbread, and a pot of lentil stew, his favorite now. I hummed as I worked, the same tune I used to sing when Daniel was a boy, stacking chairs at the diner and pretending to be my assistant manager. Back then, he thought the world was small enough to fit in his mother's kitchen. Somehow, we both forgot that's exactly where it belonged. At 4 o'clock, there was a knock. 3 soft taps, same rhythm as before. When I opened the door, there he was, Daniel. He looked lighter. Same man, different posture. No expensive watch, no designer suit, no look of performance. Just him. He held a small bouquet of sunflowers and a paper bag that smelled like garlic and basil. Homemade, he said shyly. Thought I'd contribute. I smiled. You already are. We set the table together. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 1 candle. He poured water, and for the first time in years, we ate without rolls. Just mother and son. No audience, no pride, no distance. Midway through the meal, he looked up. I met someone, he said. Already? I teased. He laughed. No, not like that. I met a woman at the clinic. She's a client, single mom. She's trying to start a catering business. She reminded me of you. Then she's already halfway to success, I said. He grinned. I'm helping her apply for grants. Told her about the Hope Table. She wants to volunteer. I nodded. Tell her she's welcome anytime. We talked for hours about life, about work, about small things that used to fill the gaps between us. He told me he walks to work now, takes the train, says it keeps him grounded. He cooks for himself, shops at local markets, calls Renee once a week for recipes. He's learning humility in the language of ordinary days. After dinner, we sat outside on the stoop, watching the sunset spill across the city. He turned to me and said, You know, Mom, I used to think you ruined my life. And now? Now I think you saved it. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The sound of kids playing down the street filled the silence. A neighbor waved from her porch. I waved back. Then Daniel said something I'll never forget. You didn't just take away a house, Mom. You gave me a home again. The tears came then, not from regret, but relief, the kind that cleans instead of burns. I reached for his hand. Son, I said softly, I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to see me, not as a burden, but as the woman who built you. I see you now, he whispered, completely. When he left that night, he kissed my forehead like he used to before leaving for school.
"Same time next Sunday?" he asked. I smiled. "You bring the stew, I'll handle the cornbread." After he walked away, I stayed sitting there, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. The air smelled like summer, like second chances. Inside, on the counter, the flowers he brought leaned toward the window, reaching for the last bit of light. Next to them sat a note he'd left under his plate. I opened it, and in his writing it said, "You were never nothing, Mom. You were everything. And now I finally understand what value really means." I pressed the note to my chest and let the tears fall freely. Not because of the pain, but because the lesson had finally done its work. The house was gone, the money spent, the noise faded. But the legacy remained. Not in bricks, in character. And as I turned off the lights, I whispered to the quiet room, "Family isn't blood. It's the love that survives after pride dies." That night, for the first time in years, I slept with peace tucked under my pillow. The kind you don't earn by working, the kind you earn by letting go. And that's how one mother turned betrayal into balance, pain into peace, and silence into the loudest lesson of all. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of love, of loss, or of second chances, hit subscribe and join me here every day, because the next story might just be yours.